In our previous video blog, we discussed the subject, how to suffer without your faith suffering. And we shared with you the first principle, expect suffering. You and I ought to expect it because the Bible promises it. God appoints it to us as believers. But there's a second principle I want to discuss with you today. How do you not let your faith be shaken when trials and difficulties come? At first you feel frustrated or even scared or anxious. Doesn't your faith suffer as a result of that anxiety? No. And there are certain things you can do to make sure that that faith is not shaken. Let me suggest 4 things to you. Number 1, you must never, ever let your faith be shaken because people are watching you. You need to remember that non-believers are watching. Other Christians are watching. New Christians are watching. And they're looking at you to see how you handle adversity. They're wanting to see if Christianity is what you have claimed it to be. If Christ will be there. They've watched other people who claim to be Christians falter and fail just like they do. Their faith didn't sustain them. But if you remember people are watching you, that will help you. But there's a second thing I want to suggest to you, and that is you must never doubt God's love for you. Because you're experiencing pain and hardship doesn't mean that God doesn't love you. I want to suggest to you it's a very proof that He does. Most Christians have a problem. It's that we have a default position that says, I earn God's blessings, or I earn His disfavor. It's the old performance mentality. That's the default position of every person in this world. And even Christians, if they're not careful, will default to a position that says, if life is good, God must really love me. If life's not so good, maybe God doesn't love me so much. My friend, you're experiencing pain right now as a believer for the very reason that God does love you. You see, He loved His Son more than you and I can even understand. And yet He brought pain into His life for a greater good. God is working in your life. That's got to be a confidence for your faith that He does love you. Number 3, you can never doubt God's power. This is always the question when earthquakes and floods and tornadoes and natural disasters occur. Well, if God is a loving God, why didn't He stop this from happening? Evidently, He's not a God of all power. No, you can't go that route. In fact, I want to suggest, as I have suggested here lately as a result of the flooding that's occurred here, that this is a proof of God's power. Amos says, quoting God, if there's calamity in the city, did not I do it? If there's calamity outside of the city, did not I do it? God takes responsibility for these things. It was the power of God revealed. In other words, when natural disasters occur like we've experienced here recently, it's God reminding men that He is a God of power, a power they cannot withstand. It's God in His love and mercy warning men that there's coming a day of judgment when they will stand before God and there's nothing they can do to withstand the flood tide of His judgment. So when these kinds of things happen, don't doubt God's power. They're a manifestation of it, warning us. And fourthly and lastly, you must never doubt that you're a Christian because you're suffering. The Bible's very clear that if we are heirs with God, heirs of God, joint heirs with Christ, we will suffer with Him. The very reason you're experiencing difficulty is because you are a Christian.